This is In Character. I'm your host, Gerard Robinson, Vice President for Education at the Advanced Studies in Culture Foundation. Hello, my name is Gerard Robinson. Welcome back to another session of In Character. As you know, I meet with a group of leaders and we have a conversation about a number of topics. I recently had an opportunity to work with Melody and several of her colleagues to talk about state level work partnerships and a lot of great things. She's going to join us right now for a one-on-one session and we're going to talk about learning loss. So Melody, welcome back.
Thanks, Gerard. It's good to visit with you again. It was a great conversation, by the way, the other night with all of those amazing individuals.
And what's so great about those conversations is we have people from different states. Some of you know each other ahead of time. Some of you met for the first time. And it organically just grows and moves. So that's why I also like the one-on-ones. For those who have yet to see your piece, you were a state leader in South Dakota.
Correct.
You've been in the chief position. You've also been in the classroom, and you worked with the governor. You worked with legislators and all those fun people. Well, right now in the work that you're doing, you can tell us more about that. Learning loss is a really big topic right now, and people are trying to figure out how to grapple with that. Talk about what you're doing right now and how it's impacting learning loss.
Yeah. So, I'm currently a director for the education industry consultants for the SAS Institute. And we are finding that as we track and follow what's going on in states, I would say that every day another article comes out from whether it's an LEA or an SEA or an education organization, all grappling with the impact of COVID. And what's interesting is nobody's calling it necessarily the same thing. It might be learning loss or learning disruption, or maybe they're trying to measure learning acceleration many different ways. But bottom line, we just don't have a good picture of what happened over this past year because we, number one, didn't have any assessments last year in the spring. And then secondly, there's been such a variance in the ways in which students have been receiving education over the past year. And it has been a year, I think, as of this week. So to be able to talk about it with any sort of certainty is really a big empty spot right now across the country. And everybody's wondering about and worried about it.
Absolutely. What are a couple of things you can share with us about what you think some states are doing to work with trying to address learning loss at whatever level they can?
Part of the issue is, and it's not even working with it, the first thing that we don't know is we don't know really what the extent of the learning loss is. So if we haven't measured it yet, we can talk about it in generalities, and we all think that we know. And I think that the first thing, and that's the work that I'm doing with SAS, is really working with a number of states to be able to find ways to measure with accuracy about just how much learning loss did students, what exactly happened. So we have students on all ends of the spectrum. We have students that we know they can't find them. The numbers are just heartbreaking to know the number of students who have not been engaged. Then you have students who were in a remote type of learning environment that may not have had adequate technology to support their needs. If you're in a family with 4 kids, you can have technology, but how in the world are you all going to be able to share enough devices to be online regularly? And then you had some students who had the hybrid model, and then you had students who really had an advantage. I have a colleague, they're both state teachers of the year. And they were home with their children. Now, of course, it wasn't necessarily the ideal situation, but that they were able to give support to their children that many other children probably didn't have. So to be able to say that learning loss across the country was at the same level, we just know that that's not an accurate assessment because we don't know the differences between the types of environments. In the state that I'm in, kids have been back in school since the start of the year. And so we can't make that generalization that across the country, but the first thing that we need to do, I believe, is to have a way in which we can accurately measure what that learning loss is. And then we can make and take some steps to be able to determine what do we need to do next. And I think that's the most important thing that we're trying to help states across the country do and leaders.
Pulling back from your state leadership experience, this is a tough time to be a commissioner, superintendent, secretary of education for a host of reasons. We have a new stimulus package, so there's more money coming down the pipeline, but we know money alone is only part of the equation. Drawing from your experience, what advice would you provide to state level leaders and departments of ed on maybe two things they can think about, not even COVID per se, but just two things they can think about as we go into the summertime?
Wow, that's a pretty big question to ask coming from somebody who it's been a while. But I think one of the first things is that we have an opportunity now, probably more than ever, to really step back and look at how we've been supporting and delivering education. So, it's a century, industrial age model that was set up to meet a certain type of need that we had. And I think what we found, and I don't want to be negative about this, because I think that we found that we were able to do some pretty amazing things, even in spite of this unreal, surreal sort of year in which we engaged in. So my advice, and I think the opportunity that we should be able to see ahead of us, is that we have the chance to really, I hate the word pivot, but we have the chance to really impact the way in which education is being delivered. There has been amazing things that we have seen that have happened in different states or in different districts, and how they have stepped up to meet the needs of students when there weren't the tools in place that we anticipated. And to take that step back and really look at and assess what really worked well over this past year in the midst of a pandemic, and what do we know really is not still meeting the needs of kids after all this time, and then make those adjustments and be willing and able and brazen to be able to undo or really ramp up things that worked well. So I think, really making that strong assessment and not settling back into going back to what we called normal, because not that normal was always bad,
sure,
but it's just this opportunity. It's like this point in time when we can just completely reset our thinking about what school can look like and give that opportunity. So I think that's one of them. And I think the other thing is that we need to really also be looking at the needs of students across the spectrum, that we're not just going back to a situation in which we are providing only supports academically. We're going to need to provide supports emotionally. We're going to need to provide supports for students in many ways that we had not anticipated before, and to really be aware of that and to put structures in place to make that happen. So I just think it's really re-envisioning, and that always sounds really, out there, but wow, what an opportunity it is to pull together and really take from what we've learned in pushing the reset button for what education could look like.
I like reset. Pivot is also a good term. Reimagine is a good term. Oftentimes when we hear these terms, it often invites philanthropy to the table to be involved as well. Is there a role for philanthropy to be involved, particularly on the emotional side, or will they also say, we'll just give as usual? Or can they reimagine?
Yeah, and I think philanthropy is amazing if they can support, because sometimes we don't think about that. We've always relied on one source as we go forward. I think, though, if we make sure that everything is aligned to a central vision, that we're not just taking, whether it's funding and so forth, that it really is aligned to what we believe is best for kids in the big picture. I was looking today, in fact, at the CARES funding that's going to be coming down to states, and it's a significant amount of money, with a lot of flexibility in some ways for what can be done flowing through the Title I funding formula, for what LEAs are going to be able to do, with some caveats around some of that. But I think that, there's an opportunity there we hope that, what I'm hoping is that we can step back in a few years and say, oh my gosh, we really did take this opportunity, use this money wisely to impact the outcome for student learning. But it's not just that we're taking this in and then doing one more thing. Because, George, you've been in education for a long time. Yep. Oh my gosh, I think back, and how many things have we done? it's, it's just like all this stuff, but to really have the opportunity to step back and go, this really worked and this is really working well. And to know that that's, that we're taking advantage of that. And in that funding pot, that's why I come back to this learning loss conversation.
Yeah.
Because there are money that is allocated and specifically directed that SEAs and LEAs need to use a proportion of that money to address learning loss. And so that kind of brings me back full circle to what I was talking about earlier, that's the work that we're doing, at SAS as well, to help them think about measuring, using it, and hopefully leading to some really great outcomes in the long run.
Well, Melody, thank you so much for carving out some time just to do a little deeper dive on some of the topics. Look forward to future conversations, and a year from now, we will see what we've done right and and how much we actually reimagined.
Thanks so much, Gerard, for the work you do. Sure appreciate it.
Okay, thanks so much. Talk to you soon.